get this, Andrew, people of faith, they have been gagged from saying anything.
As far as we are concerned, no Australian should have to be discriminated against because of who they are.
A debate over discrimination in religious institutions is happening right now in federal politics. Sound familiar? That's because we've been here before in 2022, and basically every year since Australia achieved marriage equality in 2017. So why are we back here again? Well, religious groups still want extra protections against discrimination, and LGBTQI+ groups still want to remove exemptions, allowing religious schools to sack queer staff and expel queer students. And the Labor government's approach so far has been to try and carefully walk a tightrope between those two camps. The issue is now back in headlines because in March, Attorney General Mark Dreyfus released an Australian Law Reform Commission report which recommends removing sections of the Sex Discrimination Act. Those sections currently allow faith schools, for example, to legally fire a gay staff member or expel a trans student. But that same report also says faith-based groups should be allowed to preference hiring staff that align with their beliefs, so long as it's reasonably necessary and not discriminatory. So what's the fuss? Well, some religious groups, such as Catholic and Christian peak educational bodies, really want to keep their hiring and firing preferences in schools and workplaces, so they're pushing for that to be reintroduced in a standalone religious protection bill. Other religious groups, particularly those who wear religious attire, such as Muslims, Sikhs and Jews, say the protections should centre around protecting religious people, and especially those in religious attire, from discrimination. The federal government has drafted 2 bills to address both sides, but in order to avoid a political fight, it's not releasing them publicly until the coalition agrees to support them. In other words, we don't quite know yet how it will all be dealt with. In the meantime, Peter Dutton has made his thoughts on this plan pretty clear.
Now, what he wants to do is to be able to say, oh, look, we gave it every good shot. But we just couldn't do anything on the religious discrimination bills because we couldn't get bipartisan position from the coalition. That's the setup here.
The Albanese government doesn't have a majority in the Senate, so if they can't get the coalition to cooperate, they can try and convince the Greens in the crossbench. Except the Greens leader, Adam Bent, says he wants more detail first before his party can work with Labor. The short version, the Greens won't agree to just anything. So why isn't Labor just choosing to work with the Greens? Because this is a delicate debate, one which has sunk governments into chaos before. In the final months of the Morrison government, 5 Liberals voted against the party line and crossed the floor when protections for students in religious schools only extended to gay and lesbian students, but not trans kids. LGBTQI+ staff were also excluded. The proposals were ultimately shelved, and Albanese says he wants to avoid bringing that all up again. Politically, Labor also wants to avoid the Liberals using the issue to attack them in the lead up to the federal election.
I've made it very clear from very early on in this process, in the meetings that I've had with faith leaders and others, that this needs bipartisan support because I don't want this to be an issue in which we go through the old culture wars.
But Labor might not really have a choice. If the coalition decides to push for stronger religious protections, we will once again be stuck in political purgatory. And perhaps it's because governments keep trying to find a perfect political solution for an issue that just can't be neatly solved.